Welcome to Podcast, the Business of Dentistry Podcast, brought to you by Practice Plan. Podcast delivers the best business advice, real-life stories, and practical hints and tips to make your practice a more profitable and sustainable business. And now, here's your host.
Hi, I'm Donna from Practice Plan, and I'm one of the regional support managers looking after the East and West Midlands. Today I'm joined by Sarah Buxton, and we're going to talk about staff benefits and things like free dental care that you might offer in the practice, just to give a bit more structure around what you currently do and maybe things to think about for the future. So Sarah, if I can hand over to you, can you explain what staff benefits actually mean for the employer and the team?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be doing a practice plan podcast. It's really important that as an employer or a manager and as a team member, we do understand benefits. I think it's quite wide in its scope and it means different things to different people. But when we talk about benefits, there are two types of benefits that we have. We have mandatory benefits, the ones that the employer has to provide to the team members. Now, this is to employees only, and a few of those I don't think people even see as being deemed to be a benefit because it's just accepted that team members get them. So we'll talk about you have to provide a pension to your employees. Yeah. You have to provide paid annual leave. You have to provide statutory sick pay. And I think this is an important point to note that there are some changes, and I know we're not talking about employment law changes, but statutory sick pay, it is one of those areas where there's going to be changes. So people need to just keep an eye out for what's happening with SSP. Yeah. All the family rights, you know, your statutory maternity leave and pay, paternity, adoption leave, things like that. Those are what we class as mandatory benefits.
Okay, brilliant.
And then on the second part, we have the discretionary benefits. So these are the ones that you do not have to provide to your employees, but you may choose to provide. Okay. And to be honest, I think just probably like you, over the last few years, people have definitely started to think outside the box in terms of what benefits they'd like to provide to their team members. And I think this is down to looking at how do we retain and attract new team members, that they've started thinking, what can we provide? So a few of these that I come across, and I don't know, Donna, you might have seen some other things in practice, but things like private medical insurance, critical illness, Christmas bonuses or bonuses connected to performance, dental treatment, as you mentioned. And then I've also seen things like gym membership, providing personal training sessions to the team, really things that you don't have to provide but are a benefit to the staff, and a lot of them seem to be connected to health and well-being as a bonus to try and help the team with the day-to-day life, really. You know, let's help you out, or in that type of way. And those are what we class as discretionary bonuses. So there's quite a lot more to it than the traditional Christmas bonus that you may have provided every year for the past 20 years, for example.
I'm definitely seeing more of a well-being focus in practices, and you know, I think it's really key to help not only retain your current staff but also recruit staff. Do you see it the same way, Sarah, that package of benefits can really help with that?
Absolutely. And I think where practices fall down is that they don't advertise that they provide this to their team members. So when they're doing a job specification for people to apply for the role, to attract team members, that everybody goes with remuneration. So what's the basic salary? Everybody will put that on there, but they don't extend to say, and also we provide these discretionary benefits, which is really important, because until they get into practice, they might not know. So you may be missing out on people applying for a job because you're not advertising what you actually provide to your team members.
Yeah, absolutely. And how important do you think it is to have a written policy on those benefits?
Oh, so important. So, everything, lawyers love things to be in writing, because it provides clarity and people know their obligations. And I think if you can have a good policy with clear wording, then it makes it very clear either what the employee has to do to receive these benefits,
Yeah.
the terms of the benefits, and how they may lose these benefits. Now, you'll note that I said some are mandatory and some are discretionary. And in April 2020, the Good Work Plan came into force, and it said that all remuneration and benefits had to be in the contract and made very clear.
Right.
Now, obviously, we went into a pandemic, and practices had a lot more to deal with whether their employment contracts were up to date. But I still come across employment contracts that are not up to date, haven't been updated since 2020, and therefore are not setting out clearly the benefits that they provide to their staff. And what happens in those circumstances is that it's quite hard then to say that something's discretionary. And if you want to withdraw it or change it, it makes it hard because it could be inferred that that's a contractual right.
Okay, so that leads me on to a great, next point really, Sarah, is how would a practice approach changing or formalising staff benefits?
Yeah, I think it's really important that they do get formalised as soon as possible. And I think a well-led practice will be reviewing their employment contracts on an annual basis. And it shouldn't come as a shock to the team that contracts need to be updated and need to include mandatory and discretionary benefits. Now, you may have a side policy about how that works, but usually it's quite easy to explain to the staff that you're keeping up with the current legislation and that you're putting it in writing. So introducing it in writing really isn't a problem. Sometimes it can be an issue if you want to change the benefit. And I think it depends on why you're changing it. So, for example, if we take something like private medical insurance, that should be a discretionary benefit where you'll probably want to search the market every year to get the best benefit for your team members. And it may change the value or the terms of that. And you really need to be able to do that as an employer. And I can't see team members having too much of an issue if the benefits are like for like. But if you are changing the terms of the policy and they've ended up with something that's not like for like, then it may be that actually we have to dangle a carrot somewhere else to get that policy changed. And what makes it hard is that if it's not in writing, we don't know what the terms of it are, and then we end up in we can end up in a dispute. But hopefully, if the team are on board and you explain to them why you're doing it, and that actually you're doing it in accordance with the current legislation, this is something that you need to do, then there shouldn't be too much of an issue with it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sarah. So we've talked a lot about the pros of having staff benefits, as we say, great for retention, great for recruiting staff. What are the cons from a HR perspective of introducing staff benefits?
The issue is when there's a dispute or something that goes wrong in practice, I would say, because benefits should be, as long as they're in the contract, and as long as everybody knows the terms of them, they should be quite easy to manage. But if you haven't got something in writing about the terms of that benefit, then what happens is we can have issues that I've come across whereby the employer may believe that it's unjust to provide that benefit, but they have no opportunity, but they have no option but to provide that benefit. So, for example, quite often, if you have a team member who you are disciplining, it may be that you think, I don't want to provide them with, let's pick a a discretionary benefit, the Christmas bonus, because they've done something which is gross misconduct or some sort of misconduct. Why would I want to pay them the bonus? The bonus to me as an employer is to say thank you. And I don't want to say, but actually, if you've got nothing in writing saying that those are the terms, you may have to provide that to that team member. And for an employer, that's quite gutting, know. And also, if other team members find out, they find it to be unjust, because again, it's a benefit. They've got that for Christmas bonus for working so hard, and yet this person who's done something outside the values of the team, they're still getting paid that bonus. How's that fair?
Yeah.
But it's because of the fact that there's nothing in writing, and it could be their contractual right to have that bonus. So this is where issues arise.
Right, okay. Now, I want to pick up on something that you mentioned a little bit earlier, Sarah, around free dental treatment, because that's something that I see really commonplace in practice. And having worked in practice myself, that was certainly a benefit we had. But from a law perspective, are there risks of offering free dental treatment to staff?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is one of the areas that we advise our clients on a regular basis, because like you say, Donna, it is common within the dental workplace, because it's something that is freely available and easy to provide. And I think it's almost as though the staff believe that this is something that they should get, because it's a dental practice. So it's so important that this is regulated properly, because there's two issues to this. Firstly, I don't think it's recognised that it is a benefit, and it is. So it should be in the contract as to how that's being provided. And also, if a benefit is provided, and I'm not an accountant, I don't get involved in payroll, but it is a benefit in kind, and tax should be paid on the equivalent value of that dental treatment. So if you're not declaring it, there may be a slight issue there as well. So that's twofold, really. As we said, it needs to be in writing, and also we do need to be declaring that that's a benefit that's being provided to the team member.
Right.
Now, it gets messy, because what treatment are they having, and the value of that treatment? That's the first thing. Can be quite difficult to put a number on that. And with a lot of these benefits, it's quite simple to work out the value of them. The value of private medical insurance is the amount that you'll pay, your annual premium. You'll be able to do that for your Christmas bonus. It's X amount every year, or the gym membership is whatever per month. So anything where there's a fixed amount is so much easier to be able to put a value on it, as if somebody's having dental treatment, depending on what they're having depends on the value and how much they're having at the time. So that's the first thing. But secondly, what happens when they're going through disciplinary? What happens when you're falling out with them? What happens when they no longer work for you, or they're working their notice, and they're going to work with a competitor, and you're partway through treatment, or they're demanding their dental treatment? Have you set it out that they fall onto the patient terms and conditions? It's murky water, and too many people don't put in writing exactly how this is going to work in practice.
Absolutely. And I guess you see lots of real life cases, Sarah, where actually that has been a problem, and like you say, there's no end to it. If they're leaving employment, where does that free care stop? And like you say, what do you do if you're in the middle of treatment, which can often be the case? So no, it's one to definitely think about. So I don't think many practices have ever really considered that is a problem, and often you see not only are they treating the staff, sometimes they're treating their family members as well, also for free. That I see that quite commonly in practice. So if a practice wanted to structure that benefit in a different way, so again, if we just focus particularly on the free dental care element, what else could they consider?
In my opinion, I think it's easier to look at a plan provider because there's a fixed amount that they pay. And actually what you're saying is the benefit is the plan, and then they're treated as a patient under the plan. And I think that's so much easier from a legal perspective, and it'll be so much easier from a tax perspective as well, because again, like anything, if there's a monthly payment where you're paying it on their behalf, that's so much easier to work out the value of that benefit. Also, it's just like any other, when you're in a position where for example, let's say the employment contract would say we're only providing a plan unless you're in your notice period or you're subject to disciplinary or something along those lines. So that benefit would be sorted in terms of when you have to do it, and then it would just be like any other patient. If they leave and they don't pay after that, whatever happens with your terms and conditions with your patient. And I think it makes it so much easier rather than a dispute. It's really interesting because I've had a case where the employee tried to claim they were unfairly dismissed because they were let go, and they were having free dental treatment, and they put in their schedule of loss, which sets out how much compensation they should be awarded, the dental treatment that they thought they should have over the next 3 to 4 years.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so I think which was quite a lot of compensation. And we've got nothing in writing saying how this works, when actually if we've got this in writing and we've got a quite a straightforward number, then we could have really said, no, you're not getting that, and actually you're like everybody else. If you don't pay your plan payments, then we don't provide you with treatment, and so on. And it just makes life so much easier in terms of the boundaries and the obligations. So I think it's quite important that that maybe practices do look at another way of providing this benefit, because I can completely understand why they want to provide it. And your staff can be your best advertisement, can't they, for your
Absolutely.
practice?
Yeah.
But I think it's just protecting yourself from the two elements of, we've got this benefit in kind and that we've got the employment situation of, it's fine until it all goes wrong, or until you don't want to provide it anymore. And honestly, it's not going to be nice, is it, having to treat somebody who's also suing you for unfair dismissal?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You can begrudge treating them.
Yeah.
You mentioned sort of staff plans there, Sarah, and that is something that we do certainly as a provider, where I've got practices there. I just want to set a little plan up for my staff, where it's not the same cost as a patient plan, and we can help you with that. So absolutely reach out to your regional support manager, and we can help you structure that and see what you want to include and what sort of price that needs to be costed at for you. So it's definitely something we can help you with on that front. If a practice have been offering that but on an informal basis, can that be seen as a contractual right, and can it then be withdrawn as easily as we've talked about previously?
Yeah, I mean, if something's been provided to an employee over a period of time, it can be inferred that that's a contractual right. So it is quite important that if it's been on an informal basis, that we do look at putting something in writing now, so that we can put out the terms. And again, we can come back to the fact that actually this is now statutory, and I didn't realise, but we need to put it in writing, so I need to work with you. And I always say 80-20 rule. You'll have 80% of your team who are on board with it, will understand, will work with you on it, and you might get 20% who need a little bit more enticing, who are a bit more suspicious about it, you may need to dangle a carrot to get them on board, as in, look, if we can put this in writing and do it in this way, then we can all leave early on Friday or something, I don't know, whatever it may be. But ultimately, I think with something like this, it's for their benefit. And that's how you've got to sell it in a way to them. You've got to say, I'm doing this for both our benefits, so we both know where we stand, and I need to formalise the dental treatment plans or the dental treatment that we've been providing in practice, just to make sure we're all covered.
Brilliant. Yeah. And I suppose switching it out to offer them a staff plan instead, it just gives, like you say, a little bit more structure to it, a bit more formality. So both parties know where they stand.
Yeah, and also they're not getting anything that it's not going to change differently. They're still hopefully going to get the dental treatment, which is what they're looking for, the checkups and so on, which they think that they should be. So I don't think it'd be a huge difference. And I think also what they'll probably find when they do the costings is the benefit in kind that the employee pays on the plan will be a lot less than the benefit in kind that they'll pay on the one-off private dental checkup. So that's another way to sell it to them as well, that actually there's some tax savings to be done for both of us here.
There's a benefit to both. Sarah, how can employers ensure that any benefits they offer are fair across the teams? When you think about the staff element, it's quite easy, but what about associates and non-clinical staff?
I mean, across the team, so clinical and non-clinical employees should all be treated the same. So where we find that we get issues is if, for example, you'll say, I'll only provide this benefit to my full-time workers. Well, that would be discrimination against part-time workers. So we do have to be careful that there's no type of discrimination incorporated into it. What I would say is that if they're self-employed, I would advise clients to stay away from providing any type of benefit to them, because the point is that they're self-employed, and one of the indicators of self-employed status is that they have financial risk. So the harder they work, the more they get paid. If they don't come to work, they don't get paid, and there shouldn't be any more benefit to come into work. If you look upon it like a self-employed plumber, you wouldn't say to them, oh, while you're here, I'll give you some free dental treatment. So it's the same way really that you've got to look upon it. And I think although the associates may say that that's not fair, that you've also got to appreciate that they're self-employed.
Absolutely.
So they won't get the same benefits as their employees, and that's how I would explain it to them.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sarah. That's been really helpful today. And hopefully that give people a good insight in what they should be doing with their staff benefits. And of course, both myself and, Practice Plan and Sarah are here to help if you have got any queries or want to know more. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for your time.